Okay, I call to order the December 16th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission Regulatory Review Committee at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And members present are Aho and Cooley. Do we have enough people to approve minutes? I think so. Right?
Yes,
Two
out of three.
Yeah, we got, okay. So is there anyone who'd like to move that?
Sure. So moved.
Moved by Cooley, seconded by Aho, passed unanimously. I assume we have no public comment. And so we can move on to revisions to zoning and subdivision regulations.
So I'm going to hand this over to Mike, but in your packet, Tyke has completed a milestone in their contract with us, in that they've developed their legal and regulatory best practice review. So Mike, if you would just kind of walk us through that. And I think the job for this this committee is to determine, just to take the temperature and then see what the next steps are with the full commission.
I'm so glad you did that, Mike, and not us.
Which part?
Everything.
Yeah, this is a good use of our funds.
Yes, and a good non-use of our time.
So I think that overall, the main focus of this is to complement the proposed outline, in that it really sets the table for what's to come, because there's going to be proposed revisions that someone on the commission, member of the public, business owner, whatever, is going to have questions about. And we want to be able to present rationale. And so the first step is to determine, how can we move the body of the regulations in the right direction overall. We already know overwhelmingly we want to simplify. We already know we want to make sure that we're encouraging the things that we want. So those are all good ideas, but we need to start pointing to tangible things that can actually be changed, because it's easy to agree to something in principle, but then when it comes to actually, I just spoke to an example in another town. Content neutral sign regs are great. This is how you do it. Oh, well, now that you showed it to us, we're not so sure. So this is kind of, as I mentioned, this is what you should do. And then the second part is what you must do. We don't want to go through and spend all of this time and end up with a document that is not basically up to the second from a legal perspective, with things that need to be changed, things that are not consistent, either within the document itself. And we pointed out some issues with use of terminology and not knowing what that means, to other issues where you're requiring things that are never going to happen, or extremely burdensome, or no longer something you can actually ask for. So the table, I know that it's repetitive, but we basically went through the document page by page, section by section, line by line, so that we have those as we move forward, rather than just doing this high level. Well, you make these requirements here and there. We wanted to be able to cite a line in a verse, so that if there are people that have questions, we can say this article and this requirement is a violation of this statute, or is in conflict with these case findings, etc. So that's kind of high level. And I mean, we can go through and I can talk to you about some of the changes, or we can talk about the specific issues related to the case law. Or I don't know if you want to go line by line, or, I mean, like I said, a lot of them are, I guess what I can do is go through kind of each piece, and we can skip the repetition.
Yeah, let's do that.
So, and we can certainly follow up, or if you think there's something here that's going to be extremely contentious because this is a really coveted reg, we can provide a more detailed outline or background to the whole commission if you think it's going to be controversial. So the first one is related to lots in multiple zoning districts or municipalities. And it basically says that the commission shall make a bunch of determinations for how to deal with it. And in most cases, what you see is that you either deal with, well, if the structure's in the portion of the lot that falls within zone X, then it's zone X. So there's also this Green Falls case, which basically says that the town line has to be treated as a de facto property line. So there is no, let's think about this and decide how we want to do it. And so aside from the regulatory issue there, if you're someone that's trying to design a site, you get right out of the gate, you're basically, well, the commission has to make this determination. Okay, well, what are they going to determine? When are they going to determine it? Do they determine it before I design my site, or do I show up with a site and then have them say, no, you did it the wrong way? So this is, also one of those cases where there's so much uncertainty that it's complicated to figure out. Right. And I think I mentioned this before. With projects, it's all about reducing risk, and they don't want to have risk at the wrong times. And if it gets to be too great, they just don't move forward. Not knowing how the commission is going to determine whether you fall in this zone or that zone is a really big risk if the site is a large scale project. So aside from the criteria on the legal side, it's a huge question mark from a development standpoint. So, but relatively easy fix. The second one is, which is kind of repeated throughout the document, is the sort of use of terms. You use the term zoning agent several times throughout the document. You also use the term agent and enforcement officer and director, but there's no real section that says Planning and Zoning Commission shall appoint an enforcement officer, which is known as the following. And that may be because you guys have really creative job titles and descriptions, and so not knowing what HR is going to name what position, you just want to keep it broad, which makes a lot of sense. But the first thing you're going to be asked if you go into court with a land use person is give me the appointment letter for the enforcement officer.
Right.
That
I'm sorry, should I be jumping in with questions,
yes,
or would you like to
please.
just do it? Okay. Okay.
No.
So is this just a definitional issue? Can we just put these terms in the definitions, or does that take away our flexibility?
No, I think that you can add a definition which basically says these terms, shall be known as the person, and defining that person or those persons as the ones with the authority to administer the regs. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, then that seems easy.
So, so right now we do appoint zoning agents, and the commission just appointed you and Robin as zoning agents. So you guys have those letters, or that's in our minutes. And same with Jolene, and I've also been appointed a zoning agent. And now we will announce this at the Planning and Zoning Commission, but we have a certified zoning enforcement official. Officially, Jolene just passed her Casio test after 3 years of study and case study.
Fantastic.
So we've got the real deal here in Mansfield.
Nice.
So I guess, I don't know how that needs to be fixed. It seems like an easy fix, right?
Yeah.
It is an easy fix. A lot of towns, before they had planners, they just had someone that was known as a zoning agent. It was like a one-person thing. So when you say zoning agent and then later you just say agent, I'm wondering, like in this case, would Jolene be the zoning agent, but Jennifer, perhaps you're an agent, because the planning and development person has also provided certain authority through the document. So are you both agents of the commission? So that is the stuff that an opposing attorney will just sit on for months because they're like, well, we're not sure. And do you have the authority? And simple fix. But
can't we? Yeah. I was gonna say, we could just define these as nested sets, right? Like the zoning enforcement agent has particular defined duties, but then agent is a broader category that could be left a little bit open.
Right, and particularly now with the statutory criteria for requiring that someone that's doing enforcement be,
Yep.
you know, certified, having that term hit the regs somewhere and with a clear definition is the way to go. Cool.
Good.
The next one is the first of, you know, the Mackenzie Monroe stuff, which is essentially the commission cannot arbitrarily modify criteria. You can't pump up standards and say, well, we require 100, but in certain cases we may want to increase it, which is what you do in sort of deeper into the document. And you can't even by a consensus just decide this landscape buffer is no longer required. You can, if you have clear, transparent sort of standards which apply uniformly across the document, across the regs, waive certain things. If the commission finds the following criteria have been met, then this is, you know, can be, but you can't just toss things around. And that came from a case in Monroe, Connecticut with Burger King and
we can
McDonald's.
change things for everyone in that particular zone, right? Because I think we've done it recently where we say,
But
okay,
that's a zoning reg change. You could do that as a reg change, yes,
Right.
but I think what he's trying to get at is that if someone wants something like that, they'd have to go through a variance procedure. And they'd
So-
have to meet the requirements for a variance.
and then if we want to do it, we have to do it for everyone in that zone.
Yeah.
Not unless if a variance you would not. But the way it's written in for the drive-through regulations, Article 10, Section Y, I think. Yeah, anyways, that is the way, I mean, that was approved by Kevin Deneen. We can eliminate, and that's what you're voting on Monday. You can eliminate certain setbacks in the PB1, but there's clear standards.
And it has to be for everyone in PB1.
Yeah, it would apply to every
Yep.
lot there.
In PB1, if you determine that X, Y, and Z are true, that front yard setback can be eliminated, not waived.
So why is a variance allowed?
Well, they're
Isn't-
not. You have to
They're not.
apply for a
You
variance.
can apply
and-
for a variance that would apply
yes,
to
but-
just one property?
But here's the thing about variances is that they're not just willy-nilly anybody gets a variance. There are really specific legal requirements you must
Okay,
meet
all right.
for a variance.
But
And the
this-
problem is that most people don't meet them and yet get them anyway. And in most cases, no one complains, so it doesn't go to court. However, if it does, then you're in trouble. So, you know,
Okay.
you need to be really careful about variances in a way that I think most commissions are not.
Okay.
If that makes any
Okay,
sense.
that clears it up. Thanks. Yeah.
So, like I said, you'll see the theme here. Mackenzie Monroe shows up a lot, and so that kind of applies across the board. And yeah, I think you guys have a good understanding of how to apply a waiver if there are some that are important. And in certain cases, it makes complete sense. It's just that the applicant needs to understand the criteria that you will apply to determine if the waiver can be granted.
I
all
think
right.
even using
Next.
the term waiver is problematic, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, there's other ways that you can get there. So the next one, in the definitions, there's a reference to the term mobile home and mobile manufactured home in calling them trailers. So there's been some case law, and then it was further expanded last year about how you handle mobile manufactured homes. You cannot regulate them differently than single family homes. And they are built to a separate building code standard. So to include them within that basically lumps them in with like RVs and other things. So we need to pull those out and just reference those correctly.
Good.
So next one is the definition of group home. So there's some definition clarification that needs to be provided to meet the statutory, basically the way that the statute uses the term for consistency. So again, simple. The next one, which will show up over and over again, starts in Article 5, but basically you cannot use
Mhm.
any reference to neighborhood character, community character, unique character, whatever.
Mhm.
Seems like you understand why.
Yep.
So I'll leave it at
Get it
that.
out.
Completely out, right.
Yeah, get it out. We've been trying to get it out in the little things that we've been fixing when they've come
Yeah.
up in front of us, but
And
yeah,
I think
good.
the key is, even if something came up tomorrow with some criteria that had it in there, as long as you're open about not using it in making your
Mhm.
decision, I think you'd be fine.
Right.
Next one, Article 5A2, implies that the commission can choose not to accept revised plans. You don't get to make that decision. If they submit the documents to you, it's part of the record, it's part of the process. You can't choose to do that. So we want to obviously, go ahead.
By accept, you just mean they turn them in, not approve, right?
The way that the language reads, it says that the commission would have to determine if even allowing the submission of
yeah.
the revised document is okay.
Huh, weird.
Which,
Okay,
yeah,
weird.
funky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
The
sounds.
next
old.
one, yeah.
It sounds
yeah.
like last century.
Next one refers to something that shows up again a couple of times, which is the commission basically saying that the applicant can agree to waive statutory timeframes, which you cannot do, both obviously from a waiver perspective, but also you have to meet 8.7D. You can't go above and beyond that. So that one is, again, shouldn't be controversial. The next two are both Mackenzie Monroe waivers related to sidewalks, bikeways, etc., utilities. Again, so as we get into these sections for drafting, if some of these are really important, then we need to think about when you have issued these waivers in the past or why you might want to, and then try to drill down and find criteria so you can keep them on the books if that's important.
I don't want to waive any of those things.
Well, you kind of did with Domino's.
With Domino's? What is Domino's?
Well, when you,
Sidewalk, right?
the sidewalk, yeah, you said that, well, the way we framed it was that they sort of had a sidewalk, and then I think we framed it that if the abutting property owners came in, they would be required to install a sidewalk, but that's too hard to enforce.
Is this the one on 44? That's
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
oh, okay. But I thought that had to do with okay, I'm not gonna relet it. Okay, let's not do that anymore.
Let's just establish the criteria so we don't have to talk about it in a memo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm for that.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes.
So again, the next one is another character reference. Then we move to 5A6A, which gets into some bond requirements and what you would bond for and what you would require it and for how long. So the statutes dictate what you can bond for, and they dictate what types of bonds you must accept.
Okay.
And it goes beyond cash.
Okay, so that's easy. We just follow the statute.
Yep,
Right, so
it is.
can you just tell me because we are right now, we don't want to allow surety bonds. We just want cash bonds. So because that's what we're going to with the school.
Yeah, so let me pull my notes because I think that
So we have a cash bond with the new school?
We're gonna have to have one, yeah.
Right.
We're gonna have to bond, and hopefully we can do a cash bond.
But isn't that a done deal already?
What do you mean?
I mean, which school? The elementary school?
Yeah,
But that's,
so you you don't have to accept surety, but you have to accept cash, passbook, statement savings account, or other financial guarantees beyond surety, including letters of credit, et cetera.
So why don't we like surety, and what is surety?
Surety, well, I think you can think of it like almost like an insurance bond, and the issues are they can expire or be canceled without the party that is being given the benefit of the money being notified.
That's not good.
That's a problem. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and you can get, $100,000 for like a couple of bucks a month, right? You pay your bank a monthly fee and they make this funding available. But the fact of the matter is, a town would almost never be able to actually pull that money if you needed it.
And they wanna use
yeah.
them, because we had someone recently ask if they could use a surety bond, and we said no.
Right.
Well, surety is
One of the
not
things
sure.
that. Yeah,
What?
right.
surety is not sure.
That's right. I have done in a couple of towns, we have adopted as sort of outside the regulations, a financial guarantee policy, which indicates when we are accepting a bond, what we are accepting it, or how rather, and what we would require. So for example, anything under $10,000 must be in cash. Anything above $10,000 can be in accordance with the statute. And so we would require all of the projects to be administered in accordance with this financial guarantee policy. And we limit how frequently we're going to do bond reductions, and just kind of lay it all out to make it a little bit clearer and make sure we're in compliance with that. So that's something you could think about as well. The next one is regarding this reference to, quote, other necessary approvals to be satisfied before final plans can be signed. You can't hold up a planning and zoning approval because they don't have some other approval that isn't listed here. So if there's some necessary approval that's required to facilitate a project, and it's recommended, when you approve the project, you reference it, but other necessary approvals, no one knows what that means. And it's not something that exists. So I suppose if you wanted to leave this, we would have to get some language to determine what that is, but it's not something that is defined. We know that they need to have a wetland approval. Obviously, that's something that's pretty well defined. If it's a state road, they need to have approval from the DOT, but you can't withhold your approval because DOT hasn't issued theirs. So this implies that until they get DOT, you're not going to sign the plans. And you don't want to do that, because then that leaves projects open on your part.
Right.
You want to execute them, get the plans finalized, and get them out the door.
Yeah, and sometimes DOT won't consider it until it's passed.
Yep.
by
You can-
They
Yeah,
usually don't.
You can get a catch-22 situation where everybody needs the other person to sign first.
Right. And so, for other stuff, if it's like a health issue, you would want them to demonstrate their ability to gain compliance with that, to approve it, right? Safety, health, safety, welfare. So, but yeah, to your point, particularly because most plans are approved with modifications or conditions and tweaks, the final plans can't be submitted to another agency because they're not really final until your subsequent approval.
Right.
Okay. Next one relates to, next two relate to bonds. Again, there's only very limited times you can request bonds. So for those limited circumstances, we would just, again, reference the statute, keep things consistent. Moving on to the next page. So this is requiring the completion of all work associated with the site plan within 5 years. So again, because of the Public Act and the changes to the statutes related to COVID, there were those chunks of time where these site plans can be valid for 14 and then ultimately 19.
19 years?
Yeah,
Wow.
19 years. Yes.
That seems
So-
kind of a lot.
Yeah, the legislature basically said that given COVID, they did not want the undoing of, all of these future,
Huh.
developments and important projects, et cetera. So if it falls within that criteria, it's just this massive increase to the timing, which is
Sure.
Little
crazy.
did they know there was gonna be a housing boom as a result of.
Yeah, that's again statutory. We can't do much about that. But my only question on that is, do you think this will lead to like property being tied up, waiting for people to develop, or will this lead to I don't know. I don't even know what I'm asking exactly, but it seems odd that's that long. But
Yeah, it may create issues because, people are going to be going for financing, and now that they have all
Right.
this time and, they don't have to get stuff done, or if they're at the, they're half completed and they normally would have only another year, and now they have so I think it's going to be complicated, but yeah, I think it's important to just note that, and even if we reference it, and so that we're all on the same page for what the expiration dates would be, sort of like wetlands, and they did this several years ago.
So
So
when we're referring to timeframes, shouldn't we just always tie it to the statute?
Yes.
Instead of, yeah,
that makes it much more flexible, and then you
Yeah.
don't have to go back and fix things.
yeah, that makes it,
Because
and it
that
makes it
statute
always
might
right.
change.
Mhm.
So we'll just
Yeah.
refer the statute.
The next one, which is again mentioned multiple times, talks about certificates of zoning compliance being revoked for non-compliance. Can't revoke certificates of zoning compliance. Can't really revoke anything. Court can, but you can't say we issued this, now you're in violation, so we're taking it back. And that's
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was gonna say that was kind of my question for the last one is there an ability for a project that's been approved for someone to withdraw it once it's approved? Like say they don't get their financing after 6 or 7 years and there's an opportunity to sell the property or something. How does that work legally? I guess I've never encountered that before.
For site plan, it's an administrative yes or no, so there's not really much that they could do. I suppose they could put something in the file that just says, we no longer pursuing the project. But from a special permit perspective, since they run with the land, the only way you can really terminate a special permit is if
Right.
the applicant or owner willfully terminate. So in theory, they could release and terminate if that became an issue. And I've seen that a couple of times in other towns where they're trying to move forward, and they have something that was historically approved and the bank doesn't want it as part of this, part of the sort of property history. So the commission has had to vote to accept their termination of blah, blah, blah.
It seems like that would be important if they just changed their mind and wanted to build something completely different. You can't have 2 permits on the same property that are valid at the same time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next one requires submission of applications 7 days before the meeting. Date of receipts defined by statute. It is what it is. They submitted the day before. It's still received at that date. They probably are going to be kicked out to a subsequent meeting for review and consideration, but the clock still starts ticking. So that's simple change. The next one indicates that once a complete application is received, it will be scheduled for a hearing. So I believe the case site is beyond what's in the statute, is Farmington Girard versus Hartford. And the commission is the only entity that can determine if an application is complete. And so staff cannot, as an agent of the commission, can't say, you don't have this, so therefore it's incomplete, and therefore you can't have your time in court. So if an application is incomplete, should be provided in writing, what the issue is. The commission should move forward with the proper process. And if it's a special permit, open the hearing, tell them it's incomplete, tell them why. If they don't provide it, close, deny. But if they submit to you a napkin that says this is what we want to do and they pay a fee, you more or less have got to run it through.
Process.
And that really was an issue where staff was a sort of making their own determinations on what they wanted and,
Yep.
and acting as this filter.
Yep, gatekeeping.
Right.
I mean, we
with
definitely
someone-
do a lot of advising with applicants to say, you might want to wait. Like for peer review, right? Get us your application, and then don't start the clock before you have to. But that's how we advise them.
Right. So the next one talks about applications will only be received at a regular meeting, et cetera. And so this one is more, again, wanting to just reference date of receipt as defined by statute. We don't know how they'll change. You may be in a position, where you want to receive something, or you just never know. And pushing the date of receipt out, or trying to play around with when these clocks start and stop, in most cases, just puts the commission in a position where they have less time. So we want to define date of receipt based upon how the statute says it's defined. Or just take it out. Statute says how you define it, right? You don't need to define receipt. Statute says how you must define it, right? So let's eliminate a couple of lines from a document. The next one we've covered already, which is the commission agreeing to accept revised and supplemental information. You can't say, no, we're not going to accept this additional info. We went over the next one, which is, again, waiving statutory time restrictions. Cannot do that. Moving on to the next page, it's special permit requirements, which references potential additional conditions. And so this section overall has some of these standards ultimately are allowable, but you can't impose restrictions that are greater than what's required. So the way that special permits work, you've said this use is allowed, and it's allowed based upon the following criteria. But the specific operation of this use on this property may necessitate certain conditions to make sure that it's, in keeping with the intent of the reg. But that wouldn't mean, well, we want to move the building and increase the setback by double. So we have to be very careful that you don't get into sort of design criteria in these quote unquote additional conditions. That's tricky. So we kind of dabble in that as you move through some of these. And so we want to be very clear in that we may look at hours of operation, we may look at buffering or whatever, lighting standards or occupancy, what have you. But we're not going to say that we're going to double your setback or increase your parking criteria simply because it seems like you may need it and someone else might not. Next one, we've gone over the other necessary approvals. We went over the performance bonds and what you can require. The next one is the commencement of activity within 1 year. So for special permits, there is a very recent case which is still kind of being litigated in the land use attorney community, which about what it means for special permits. And effectively, special permits you can condition timing of special permits to complete work, et cetera, but it needs to be no less or no more restrictive than what the statutes obligate for site plans, because it's an improvement. And when you approve a site plan document in accordance with the regulations, even though you're approving the use as a special permit, the site plan is being reviewed under the same criteria as an administrative site plan. And so you can't tell a special permit person that they have different time frame to get work done simply because they're a special permit use, when if they were a site plan, they would have a certain number of years, or under the statute, potentially as many as 14. So we want to just align that so that it's consistent. Makes sense. I want to make sure I'm not just,
Yeah.
Cool. Again, next one, consistency of terms, using the term certificate of compliance. And is that different than a certificate of zoning compliance? And then again, trying to revoke it, which we can't do. Get into prohibited uses, which is mobile homes. And again, this is where we get into the definition of mobile manufactured homes are considered to be trailers, and we're prohibiting something the statute says we cannot. Next one, we get into advertising signs, and based on these Supreme Court cases, which is a Connecticut case, you can't, the only thing that the town can regulate based on the Connecticut case is commercial free speech, commercial advertising signs. So you're using a term that sort of the rest of the legal community uses differently, and so it creates a little bit of confusion. It's also obviously creates issues with Reed Gilbert. We know that we're going to create content neutral sign regs. We've established that as one of the major goals of this process, but we're just calling it out. The next one, prohibited uses. Based upon this, the Shad case, you can't completely prohibit adult uses. Our statute locally also says that, or statewide says that the regs need to be uniform. There needs to be uniformity within the regs. You can't treat things differently just because. So effectively need to find a place where that type of use can go. It may be a place where functionally will never be built. Maybe, that all the siting criteria would mean that it could never actually happen, but the zoning regs can't explicitly prohibit these uses. And that was a free speech case from a long time ago. The Article 6B references your old POCD.
Can we just say the POCD?
Yep, you sure
Thank you.
can.
Yeah.
And then the next one references a 1985 ENS guideline, which were revised in 2002, simple fix.
Can we just say
Next
as
one.
amended too? Because those are about to be revised again.
Yeah, most recently adopted, or yes, as amended. Yep. Next one is bonding, and then waiver, and then character and character. We touched on the group homes. So there's some specific statutory language which talks about the siting of group homes. And so that you can't require a group home of 6 or fewer to meet any different criteria unless it's within 1,000 feet. So we want to make that consistent with the statute. Simple. We get into another issue of character. Then we get into this other criteria, which requires an owner operator maintain proof of adequate accident insurance on the premises for an automobile accident. That is not within the scope of P&Z. I don't see why you would ever require that. Again, just, in my mind, a simple removal of lines in the reg that don't need to be there. You could never
That's what
find
we're
a
paying you
property
for.
owner.
That's what we're paying you for, to get rid of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
I want a
yeah,
100-page document after this is all done.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about sort of the weight of the regs and the weight of this approval process, and like I mean, this agenda is almost 30 pages. Like this agenda for this commission is almost 30 pages, and there's no decision being made. We gotta, so that is a major focus. All right, we have a bunch of Mackenzie Monroe waivers again. Then this exceptions section, which allows the PZC to exempt certain ground mount solar installations on a case-by-case basis. So again, we want to define standards. We want to make it easy for people to understand the expectations of the commission. And also for some of these things, maybe for ground mount solar, does it need to go to the commission, right? Like, do you need to be making case-by-case determinations about solar? I don't know, but it's worth discussing. Yeah,
I think in the past, we were saying whether it was in the middle of a wetlands or not. I don't know if we ever,
Yeah, but if it's in the middle of a wetlands, it's
It
gotta
wouldn't
go
get
to the
approved.
wetlands agency.
Yeah.
right.
I suspect that this is there because people, when they first started seeing those ground mount solar things, thought they were hideous and ugly and didn't want them in their neighborhood. I think that's a sop to that, is what
Yep.
it is.
That's my
But-
guess.
I think people are used to them now.
And I also think that they're not very common. They're not something that a lot of people can put up. They don't have the space and the size and the funding and the desire to do it. So
I thought that one on South Eagleville Road was ugly when it went up, but now I'm used to it.
it's like you don't see the cell tower a year later.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. The next one is minimum floor area requirements. So there's a court case and also some language in 2129. You cannot establish minimum floor area. And that's really because if you say something has to be a certain size, you're basically saying you have to have a certain budget. You can't afford 1,000 square feet.
Right.
You can't move to Mansfield.
Yep.
So that's like, simple.
So Mike, does this open the door for tiny homes?
So tiny homes.
But there's health requirements though for space, right? That would come into play, and
Health and
that's where the
building.
that's where the intersection is. It's whether it's our authority or if it's health or building codes authority.
Yeah, tiny
Right,
houses.
The health regulations will set a minimum without us having to put a minimum.
Yeah.
So you're
So-
saying health gets involved in floor area, not
Mhm.
just the availability of well and septic?
Because they need to
Because airflow.
determine that, yes. Yep. Adequate access to light, ventilation, et cetera. I think
So
it's
when-
70 square feet.
When we are ADUs, we require a per person square foot. Right? Don't, Jolene?
So
So
we can't do that anymore?
I don't think we
So
ever,
I'm on Wi-Fi, so I'm a little bit delayed, which is why I'm stepping on people probably more than usual. But so the public act that obligated the ADU stuff does have specific limitations, which allows you to set certain parameters, and it's 30% ratio or the 1,000. So you can do some of that within the ADU realm.
Of course, we just opted out of that.
Because
Right.
we already have those regs that are all very similar. We just have a few differences that have to do with owner occupancy and I think outdoor doors and things like that.
Yeah, I wrote about like a couple of months ago, I wrote a tiny house reg for another town, and we just got the first application under it, which I'm actually pretty excited about. The most recently adopted revision to the state building code, which was adopted in October, has what's referred to as Appendix Q, which is a design guidelines for tiny houses
good.
specifically. So those will, I think, be coming.
Good.
So I think it's really cool, and
Yep.
actually had someone ask, why aren't we, looking at these as a solution to people who are trying to stay in town while their crumbling foundation is replaced, because
Sure.
they can be moved.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I mean, we regularly get inquiries about whether or not tiny houses are allowed in Mansfield. And I was always referring to that 800 square foot minimum. So.
So now we won't have that anymore. Yeah.
Good.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's some other stuff related to siting, and like I said, it took me a long time to write a reg to allow a tiny house, but not create a reg that would allow someone to live in an RV.
Yes, because that's the
and
wheels that
so-
are the problem. Yeah.
Mike, what
So-
town? I wouldn't mind reading that. What town was
Yeah.
that?
I can just if I forget, remind me. I'll send you the reg.
Okay.
That's great.
You can look through the whole document, but it's a 2-page reg, and we kind of worked with their builder, the folks that build these, and there's some national standards that they build to. So we
Good.
reference some specific design standards and criteria. So
Well, the
yeah,
exciting thing about that is some affordable housing too.
Mhm.
Naturally
Yeah.
occurring affordable housing.
all right, so again, we have the next one, we talk about nonconformities and requires that certain things be commenced and completed. Nonconformities are expressly protected by statute. You can't say that if you don't do something within a year, it's gone. So again, there's an act that says that.
Right,
in
we have
statute.
something going on in our attorney, so we will refer that to Kevin.
That you cannot basically make a determination about the abandonment of a nonconformity without expressly considering the intent of the owner. So the owner has to demonstrate an intent to abandon.
That's
So
what I thought, that's what I
actually,
remember
one
from
of the
Casio.
Yep.
And yeah, so we've had this is on our legal agenda. It's been on for like 6 months now. Yeah.
Wow.
and we're gonna be trying. We had previously worked Casio with the Home Builders Association on an agreement that nonconformities could be a sunset provision for nonconformities at 7 years. So we're going to try to get that on the docket for this legislative session so that we all
Cool.
understand that 7 years there's a clock.
Just one, well,
All right.
real quick, Mike, if a house burned down in 82, can they, per this, you think they could rebuild it?
They still, is it the same owner?
No.
That is a bit more complicated. If they purchased it with the intent of rebuilding the house that had been there, then I think the answer is yes. If they just purchased an open lot that is in a certain zone, then I think you could make the argument that the answer is no. So it really would depend on
Okay.
what they thought they were taking ownership of.
Well, they sent me a picture of the house burning and an approximate location of the foundation. So that could show that intent, that they were intending to rebuild it, right? Yeah, but anyways, that's for our lawyer.
So nonconformities, then we've got another Mackenzie Monroe waiver, and then a bunch of the Reed Gilbert stuff, which again, we're going to be addressing to make content neutral. And then we have Mackenzie Monroe for signs, quantity, location, et cetera, to be modified, which can't do. Bunch of references to character and excellence and design and aesthetic character. Again, things that are not tangible. No one knows what those mean. I couldn't even tell you what I think they mean to me personally. And we get back into waivers, and then we get into Article 10, which is flood hazard. And your regs are do not match the state's flood regs, which is interesting. I would have expected your regs to be 10 times as long as the state's flood regs, not half the length, which is what yours are. So I'm not quite sure. It's almost like something's missing. But there were recently revised in 18 flood regs. So our recommendation is going to be that the town adopt those model regs. It's the easiest thing to do when you're dealing with FEMA compliance.
Good. Yes, let's do that.
And doesn't require any real thought because those were established like the wetland regs.
Yep.
Mobile manufactured homes. Again, then we get into 2129, and that this requires the applicant to present evidence of existing and future character of the neighborhood to the commission. That is, what even is that, you know? So then we go back into the prohibition on mobile homes and again, neighborhood characteristics. We go back into some bonding, and then we touched on Fairfield versus the international investors case, again, with the special permit timelines, revocations, renewals, et cetera. So those would all, by the time we get to this section, I think we'll probably have a little bit more guidance on what folks are thinking. The question that still is a little bit foggy is if and when you can require renewals of special permits. A lot of towns require you to come back every 2 years or something to renew. And there's a little bit of disagreement on if you can do that. The people say no, will tell you, you can't approve a project, have someone sink $5 million into getting a development done, and then show up 2 years later and have the commission say, yeah, you know what, we changed our minds, we don't like it. But at the same time, there may be certain standards that you want to ensure compliance with. So that's a little bit of a stay tuned, but hopefully we'll have some better guidance by the time we get down into these articles. The next one, revocation based upon for violations of live and amplified music. Which again, you cannot do. You've got to follow 812. Minimum floor area, which we talked about. Revoking permits again. The next one is churches and other places of worship. So this one basically says that per the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which people refer to as RLUIPA, you can't establish different standards for people that are assembling for a religious purpose as you would for something else.
And we should take the word church out of there.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that you would even try to do this, but it's language that we don't need and is just asking for people to take issue with. And
Okay, so we're just taking the whole thing out and don't mention
ditch
places of worship either.
I can't think of any realistic reason that a church would need to have a different standard than some other assembly type of use.
And we just did that with the cannabis regulation though.
Oh, just change the word church. Yeah. Well, the only thing I could think of is a church that also in a university town wanted to provide beds for people. Might be problematic.
Regulate them as like a shelter, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and so and the key is if you have standards for shelter that say X, but you have a standard for a church or place of worship that says Y.
Yeah.
Because it's as if that the religious component changes something. So if we would just want to move this place of worship category into an existing use category that has criteria so that they're being regulated based upon use and not why people show.
We shouldn't even use the word place of worship.
No, because you're violating your RLUIPA if you do that.
Okay, so those all have to come out.
But why do we even have to reference a religious institution?
No, we don't. We should just take it out, right?
You just want to make sure, I would say you probably want to include it in your use tables so that people know they can do them in whatever
They can have churches. Yeah. Okay.
Can we say like assembly? Like what's the difference? Like, can we say a conference center is the same thing as a church? Like, can we incorporate that into that?
You can use the term, you just can't establish different criteria because of it.
Got it.
But we did that with the cannabis regulation. We said that
Right.
it can only be so many feet from a place of worship, so we shouldn't have done that.
No, because you're not regulating the church. You're regulating or the religious.
Cannabis.
Right.
Yeah.
And you would not, if a church wanted to occupy 2 doors down from a retail establishment, you wouldn't say, well, you can't, because our cannabis regs would, right? It's not a two-way restriction. So that would be fine.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna.
So just making sure I'm understanding this. So we would want to keep something in the use table, not to regulate it, what they cannot do or provide specific uses, but just to say this is a use that can be there without defining it, right? So just assuming everyone understands what church or other place of worship means.
Yeah, I think, right. So that someone can read the regs and say, okay, I can have a church in this location.
Yeah, that's pretty plain meaning, I think. Yeah.
Right. And that's the last of it.
Woo.
So nothing overly scary. And I think all of it is very, like seems, at least to me, to be reasonable and not overly controversial.
I can't,
Bringing them up to date,
Huh?
bringing them into this century.
yeah, I can't, based on my past experience with our town, I don't imagine any of this would be even remotely controversial in any way.
I think it'll be applauded.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be crickets, frankly,
Will
but
be ignored.
I think it'll be just a big shrug. Oh, okay. So, but who knows? The day will come when we will have a surprising
So
amount
this,
of
so we'll
controversy.
bring this in front of the whole commission at some point, right?
So
Yep.
that's, I think we should talk about, just to keep reiterating the next steps and how we're getting this document produced. So can you kind of articulate your vision for that, Mike? Not to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, the reason for this was to really set the table, and when we identified our path of the project overall, we didn't know what we were going to find. You might find stuff that is really bad and really controversial, and you're going to say to me, oh, Mike, there's a couple of members on the commission that are going to really insist that we keep this. So this gives us an understanding of how big of a lift it would be if the only thing we wanted to accomplish was bringing the document into compliance. And the good news is it's not going to be a big lift. And so I think now this is more of an FYI, because a member of the commission cannot say, I disagree with Mackenzie versus Monroe. Well, that's great, but the court has said you don't get to. So this is really an FYI, here's a heads up, and now we start into the actual revisions of the regulations. And as we move through, when we get to these articles, we plug these revisions in so we can kind of start moving through, article by article and getting in things situated for alignment with the proposed future organization of the document.
So my vision is that we go to the commission, we just do just highlight Mackenzie. We're going to remove all the thing. We're going to bring it up, the PA 2129, fix those things, and sort of, I think we probably could do a broader brush than what we did today. Then say, okay, we're going to pause here. Now we're going to reorganize the regulations per the outline that we've looked at. And then we're going to have a public hearing. Do we need a public hearing? I think we do, because we're sort of changing stuff. Yeah, we definitely did.
You need the hearing when you wanted to adopt it. And so that,
yeah,
right. So if you, depending on when and what you adopt, yes.
So what's the time frame for Tyke to what do we need to do to move this process along, I guess?
Well, the next step would be to just reorganize. And if there, I think that depending on how the rollout goes with, assuming there's no other questions or issues with the whole commission, I wouldn't think, well, the other thing we sort of have to talk about separately is the general code process. We need to figure out when we want them to fit in. If we want them to fit in up front, then we would include them in the timeline, because the formatting and all the sort of the prettying up of the document that we would do in Word to give you a document that you would use is different if we're going to be going with the general code stuff, because they format and they have their own process. So if we don't do general code till the very end, then we'll have to figure out kind of what we want things to look like as an interim. So we'll have to talk about that offline to make sure we're prepared for whatever that handoff looks like.
I think the commission won't, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're going to care if it's in general code or not. You just want to know that it's written in a way that reflects what the commission wants, right? Or am I I mean, obviously you want it
Yeah.
easier for staff and for you and
Yeah.
the developer to understand, but
Mhm,
that's,
mhm, mhm.
yeah.
So basically, right, what we do now is we plunge into the rewriting of the entire code, right?
It's the reorganization. We're not
Reorganization.
necessarily.
We're not rewriting, yeah.
Not rewriting,
Right now we're reorganizing.
right. And, you know, we, obviously that involves rewriting, but it's making it more efficient. So
Now, can we do changes while we're doing this?
So that's what I want to talk, if we're ready to move on to B, I'd like to talk to the commission about that. Are we, Mike, do you have anything else to add about that?
Yeah, I have to jump like around 11:15-ish, so
Yeah,
it'd be good to.
yeah. So just, I'm going to go into B, the affordable housing regulations. Our Affordable Housing Committee had it convened its first meeting on December 6th, I think it was. They're very interested in looking at our affordable housing regulations, and I know that that's been a priority of the commission, and it certainly is a priority of the town as a whole, and it's in your affordable housing plan that was adopted by both the PZC and the town council. So we have a number of pre-applications, a number of applications that are in wetlands right now. And right now you are requiring 10% of the units be set aside for 80% AMI. So they would be restricted as affordable.
Right, and that'll never get us there.
Exactly. So,
because-
so what I've asked Mike to do is to see if we can kind of quickly do a kind of a simple fix, although affordable housing regulations are not simple. You have to have a minor in calculus sort of, but I think at the very least, we need to push the needle from 10 to 12 to 14. And I would look to Mike to tell us what other towns are doing and how that's working, because there is that kind of sweet spot where you don't want to push someone into 830G, but we do need to catch up here a little bit. So, and we also don't want to, as Mike put it, the money goes somewhere. And so do you have more affordable units, but then the rest of the units are like so expensive. So
Now, can we do that too for projects that have already, if they've already applied, are they grandfathered?
no, but we need to, as soon as they submit their application, we can't do this. So that's why right now they're in
right
wetlands.
now.
We gotta do
Okay,
it
so
now.
if they're during the inland wetlands and they haven't done the PZC yet, we still have a window of changing.
So we need like January to do this. Mike. But what I'd like to do first is just to move the needle from 10 to 12 to 14 and kind of try to keep the same exact regs, but just up the percentage if we can. Do you think that's doable, Mike?
It's just changing the number from 10 and everything else is the same.
Is
Yeah,
that,
there's no reason why.
is that in your experience, is that something that developers can swallow as well? Are we sort of similar to other towns?
One of the things that I was telling Jennifer about earlier was we talked about in Tallinn and other places is that the problem really becomes percentages and fees in lieu all affect projects disproportionately in that smaller projects take huge hits and bigger projects just spread it out over a bunch of people and a bunch of percentage points on so sometimes what you'll see are towns implementing sliding scales so that with the greater density and greater project size, our expectations increase.
I think that makes sense because we don't want to have the unintended consequence of providing incentive for only large projects.
So I think that I think right now that we gotta plug the dam or whatever. I think because all we have a market for in this town are very dense luxury apartment complexes. So we need to apply the regulation, in my opinion, to that right now. Like,
let's do it.
So and it has to be simple. and easy to adopt, and then we go into the other stuff later. So I guess Mike and I can talk offline, but you all are supportive to bringing that to the
Yeah.
commission and having a
Yep.
public hearing. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we can provide a good discussion about why this is necessary. I mean, it's simple math. It's not,
Because right now it's
yeah, it's
5
just math.
units, it's 5 units or more. Have
Mm-hmm.
to have an affordability restriction. I almost think the 5 units is too low, I think we need a higher threshold, but I don't know. I'd look to Mike for that. If we're requiring someone with coming in for 5 units to put 10% of their units as affordable, is that
Well,
too heavy? I don't know. Is it too heavy of a lift, or?
well, that,
We can make that 10.
What?
We can make that 10 units. Because we don't want to totally discourage someone from building 5 units.
Well, we have no one doing 5 units.
Okay,
yeah, but see, well, we don't have an ability to do infill where you might do 5 or 6 units either. There's really nowhere in town anybody would want to do that.
right.
The regs wouldn't let you do it almost anywhere in town as it is at the moment.
Right.
Anyway, so
Anyway, so
but
Mike,
mathematically, it's a problem
we
too.
need
Yeah.
to plug the dam and or whatever the expression is, and if we could get something as soon as possible, that would be great. And then we could put that right on, just put it in Article 10, I just update that section in Article 10 that you have.
Yeah.
The second thing that we need to talk about is very quickly looking at applying the DMR. Because we have a neighborhood stabilization plan happening for the northwest portion of town. And part of that is, do we want to allow the application of the DMR to parcels on Hunting Lodge Road per se?
Remind me what DMR is.
It's the design multifamily residential. So it's if there's a parcel that's large enough that has the different criteria, they can get multifamily at a pretty high density.
Mhm.
So do we want to look at that and work with Mike to try to do some sort of moratorium on that until we can take a breath?
Because we've got Pond Place coming back, right? That's part of it.
Yeah.
Are they
So-
somehow grandfathered?
No,
Which one is
No,
Pond
okay.
Place?
That'd be a totally new application.
it's south of Carriage House.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
want to, I don't want to target a
Yeah,
specific.
I know.
Yeah, no,
I
of
don't
course.
think we want to even get
No,
that's not related to any particular developer, any particular parcel. It's
No,
just
no,
what
no.
we want for that neighborhood.
Yeah, so we don't already have them under those design regs? And you're asking us to, or you're saying we should?
Everything on Hunting Lodge Road, except for Hiplinko, is RAR 90, I believe.
Okay,
And
And they're
and
just-
the other ones are non-conforming.
Right.
Multifamily units within RAR 90.
okay,
We don't want 90,000 square feet either for that road.
But we don't know what we want.
We
And
don't know
right
what we
now,
want.
so I feel like we had this whole discussion about 3 or 4 years ago. So I was
Yes.
kind of surprised that you were saying that we're still at 10%, because I know we had this whole discussion pre-COVID and I thought we had already adopted a 12, but apparently we did not get there. And I know we've had this discussion about the design
yeah.
criteria multiple
we
times.
need- now is
But
the-
we just haven't moved it any forward.
No,
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's
okay.
do that.
And we've
Okay.
talked about Hunting Lodge Road.
Yeah, multiple
endlessly.
times. Yeah, let's
Multiple
actually do
times.
things.
Yeah, so Mike and I will,
What
Mike
concept?
and I will talk, and I think what we'll do is we'll just put it on the PZC agenda in the
January meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
Excellent idea.
But for Hunting
Woo!
Lodge as a whole,
what?
and for Hunting Lodge Road as a whole, that's now part of a study, right? Northwest study.
A study that we have to get started. Yeah,
We have to get started, okay, but is that something that's outside of the PZC?
The study.
No,
No, okay, Okay,
it's not, it's a plan. You are not just the zoning commission, you are the planning
Planning
commission.
commission.
So you'll be involved, but it's a staff has to get it underway, but you are a key stakeholder to that.
okay, and the other stakeholders in that are who?
The people who live there, all of the, we're gonna have to define that. The town, we own we have a civic presence right there that is about to go away. We've got affordable housing, we've got Yukon property, we've got
So part of this is just broadening the number of people who will take part in the process.
right, it's not just about zoning though. So you guys will look at the things in the plan, and all of this will kind of be funneled into your POCD, which is you got to start working on.
Yeah.
But it also will identify infrastructure improvements. Mike, you can, if you need to go, I don't want to hold you up, but thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
But you can
Thank
stay and
you, guys.
listen.
Fantastic.
And we're probably getting a little bit off the agenda, but it does relate to affordable housing and the Tyche timeline. The deliverables of this plan are yet to be determined, and they will be determined. It's kind of like citizen planning. So it will be determined by the stakeholders, and the stakeholders are a broad group, but some of them will have to do with things under the Planning and Zoning Commission's jurisdiction, but also under the town council, because we're gonna need money. Like there may be streetscape improvements. Maybe we
Great.
need to put sidewalks or new trails or purchase open space or, do a public-private partnership for Goodwin Elementary School, or I don't know.
Is this
Yeah.
entirely in-house, or do we have a consultant working on the plan?
We don't have, we need to do an
Let's hire
RFP.
one.
We have money to hire one. It's just a
Okay.
matter of sitting down and putting my brain
Right.
to do the RFQ. But we are undergoing a Parks and Recreation master plan right now. And that will be something the PZC will eventually, you will be taking part in that. But we have a community engagement consultant as a sub. And I've been talking with them because and maybe starting with just like a big old map that is sort of like, it tells a bit of a story. Like here are the trails, here's affordable housing. And then people can we can sort of do like a SWOT analysis is what I'm sort of thinking, but I have to, but I know everyone is chomping at the bit to kind of get this going. Anyways, all to say, affordable housing, we need to add some things to the PZC.
ASAP. Yeah. I'm sorry for having totally dropped the ball on that. I kind of in my head thought we had already, I know we'd gone through this whole conversation years ago, and I thought we had dealt with it. Because the math hasn't changed.
Nope.
So
We thought about dealing with it, but we didn't deal with it.
Yeah. So
yeah, we had endless conversations about it, I think, but yeah.
Right. The other thing I was going to say is, I'm not sure if you've heard, you read in the paper, but the town we think is considering doing a pilot for a 4-day work week, which would mean staff would not be working Fridays. So right now you adopted, or I think we filed a meeting calendar for you on Fridays. So we need to come up with, is there another time?
That is totally fine. Yeah, because I'm so glad to hear this, because after making a big fuss and saying we need to change it to Friday, the person who initiated that in my work now said, oh, I've changed all my things to Friday. I really want to kill him.
Yeah.
So I really want to kill him. So I have nothing. So I have said, okay, we're going to wait to calendar everything for next semester until early January. So you guys get first go, pick whatever time you want, and then everybody else is going to have to work around us.
So do we do Thursdays again?
Yeah, if you want to go back to that, that is fine by me.
Yeah.
And right now you are scheduled to meet every other week. And we're ending up canceling a lot of those meetings. We can keep them on the books, but
That's
it
fine.
feels like with Tyche, you guys were talking and doing a lot of work of this. Tyke is now doing this work and
For
we're
us,
coming.
yep.
So it's up to you. We can start out doing a every other week schedule on Thursdays at 10, or we can just do monthly, whatever you want to do.
Doesn't matter to me, whichever works best.
What do you
Whatever you think
Paul?
would make the most sense as far as the workload. And, I mean, I feel like we're sort of like talking about things, but we're not actually doing anything. And so much of this burden is on you. If you need that time to
Yeah, I
actually
think
be
monthly
doing stuff,
would
then
probably
monthly's
do
fine.
it.
Yeah.
I think Tyke's gonna need that time, but
Yeah, great.
yeah. And
Let's do that
I
then.
also think with some of this stuff, we need to just go get it right to the commission.
Yes.
And just move.
Yep.
I want some new regs.
Yeah. Let's get moving. I mean, I know that, before Linda left and before COVID, we had been working on this for years and years and years and years. And it felt like we would work really hard on something for a month or two, and then we'd move on to a totally different thing. But the regs never got to the commission, or slowly got to the commission.
Right.
So yeah, that would be really nice to
But there might be a time-
Yeah,
There might be a time later in the year where we do need to meet more frequently to get
Sure.
the regs
We'll do
ready. for the-
special meetings, or we'll amend your calendar.
yeah, that works for me. Going forward, I will actually have more time. So.
And
that's
then
good.
the other thing I wanted to mention is that I scoured your the PZC agenda to see how folks are appointed or to our regulatory review. And you have a number of new members. And I think Jillian put it that this is a great way for people to really learn this stuff.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So I think your agenda is already published, I think, but I think we'll see if folks want to just volunteer. And then
I've
we'll.
been leaning on Larry. I've been leaning on Larry to do it.
Okay.
I think I can. take-
Sarah may be interested as well, so.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm not sure what her schedule is, so.
The other, I know that part of the issue with some people is that they work during the day, so a daytime meeting is not necessarily available. However, if there are people that are interested that could do like a lunchtime meeting during the workday.
So would 4 o'clock on a Thursday work for you guys?
That
Or
would work for
4:30?
me. Yeah.
So maybe we can just be a little bit more flexible and put it out to Thursday. Right now, I think they're still trying to figure out a few of the details, but Thursday looks like it will still be our long day.
Mhm.
But I think we're gonna be working late. Obviously, we're gonna have to make up the hours somehow, so we'll be working a little bit later. So,
Be working
and-
later each day, right?
sorry,
We'll be working later each day.
right, and then shorter lunches as well. But the exact schedule that town halls opens is going to be announced very shortly. So I think what I'll try to do something is Thursdays at say 4:30. Or 4:30.
Sure.
And then we'll
That's
set the calendar that way. And then for your next meeting, we'll plan to have you meet not until late January, I think. Because you're
Okay.
gonna be, because Tyke's gonna be doing their work. The commission's gonna be going forward and as sort of the commission experts on this, you'll wanna take a more detailed look, because I think you have a better
Sure.
understanding of these complexities. But I think going to the full commission makes sense.
Sure.
And we may need to have a special meeting or two.
Yeah, I mean, but we would do some preparation before taking things to the full commission.
Well, this was it.
This was
No,
it. This was it. But I
this
mean,
is it.
in the future,
Yeah.
for future things.
And then affordable housing and the DMR, I think we're just gonna go straight to the commission.
If it's something complex or something new that we're changing, then yes, we might need more time to prepare the commission, but
Yeah.
these
And I'll
things are fairly
continue-
straightforward.
I'll
Yeah.
continue to run that by Paul as I do. So, and then Paul, you and I can make that decision, and if it needs to come to this committee, that's fine.
So we're planning a late January meeting.
And we'll do monthly.
Okay, so
I'll
that would be
just
good. So I'm gonna be in Argentina in February until the 26th. So late in January and late in February would be good for me.
Okay, so, so this, in terms of the schedule, we've agreed that I will put it out to the full. We want more members. And hopefully some folks will volunteer, and then we'll say, we'll try to do a Thursday. We'll say just Thursday at 10 work. If not, then we'll go, we can do later in the afternoon,
That sounds like a good
but we'll
plan.
keep Thursday. Okay.
Okay.
So I think that's it. Luann, are you,
Yes.
can I give you a call about the, or you want to give me a call, or just give me comments on the wetlands motion?
Yes, yeah, I did look that over and nothing stuck out at me that needed to be changed or that I thought needed to be added, but I will take a more detailed look at it after this meeting and get back to you.
Good.
As far as chairing on Monday, do I need to know anything or do anything?
Why don't we adjourn the
Okay.
regulatory review committee, and then we can maybe have just a
Very
few.
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay, so we are adjourned at let's see, what time is it? It's 11:25 Eastern Standard Time.
great.
thank you, Jillian.